It's the second week of OTA practices for the Cowboys. What was the biggest takeaway from Thursday's practice? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast
Locked
Network, your
On.
team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Cowboys listeners will get $50 off purchases of $500 or more at BlueNile.com. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, what's going on today, sir?
Not a ton. We got some OTA notes. I'm excited to go over them. Per usual, we will read too much or too little into whatever we hear. So I'm excited to see which side we come out on.
Yeah, so we actually didn't talk about our biggest takeaway from practice, but I've got a feeling that you and I are going to have the same one. So let's go ahead and start. What was your biggest takeaway?
I think my biggest takeaway, and I don't think it is the same thing, because I think the biggest takeaway, there's lots of notes about what actually happened on the field, but to me, it was listening to guys like Zach Martin and, some of the other guys talk about what happened at the end of last season. I think that was actually, we'll talk about all the OTA notes. All of that's very, very important. I think, none of it is going to be super unexpected, but I do think hearing them kind of talk about their level of disappointment in the way the season ended last year. It was Zeke who was the other person who I heard speak about it. Hearing Zach and Zeke both speak about the disappointment and how the team played down the stretch and how they need to be better about finishing. We had our own speculation about what happened with this team or whether they were good enough or, the consistency and inconsistency issue. So hearing them talk about it, to me, just kind of helped reaffirm that that's what we all agree is what happened, is that this is a team that had a lot of high expectations, was set up well to go into the playoffs, and then just didn't do what it took to win the game, which is truly unfortunate.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I just from listening to Zach Martin talk, I felt a sense of urgency from him and Zeke, both those guys. And it could just be they're getting older. Zach Martin is in his 30s now. Zeke Elliott, I think he probably realizes that he's going into year 7 now, I believe. Like it's time to go. It's time to get past the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and actually make some noise. So I don't disagree with you. My biggest takeaway is actually something that didn't happen on the practice field, but it happened on the sidelines. Michael Gallup.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the biggest takeaway for me. So if you didn't see this, Michael Gallup was at practice yesterday working with Brett Brown on the resistance cords. He was at practice. Mike McCarthy actually praised him after practice, saying that he's been there almost every single day. Usually when you're working on the resistance cords, it means you're 1 or 2 weeks away from getting back on the field. We know that's not the case for Michael Gallup, right? He's not going to be practicing in mini camps, and we might not even see him at the beginning of training camp. But what it does tell you is that the rehab is going well, and I think the Cowboys are pretty optimistic that they'll have him early on in the 2022 season.
I think we could say, generally speaking, right, when you're with Britt on the cords on the field, and this is something, man, Brit watch is a thing, right? Like, especially when go to training camp, you pay special attention to who's out there with Brit, who's out there working on the cords. And I can tell you definitively that it doesn't necessarily mean 1 to 2 weeks, but what it usually means is that you are kind of entering the last stage of your recovery, of your rehab. So he could potentially be working on the cords for months. It could be a month and a half. Right?
It's good to see he's at least at that stage.
Exactly.
As we enter June, right?
Exactly. That's the point. The fact that he's already on the courts, we're not even in training camp yet. That to me indicates a good sign for the timeline being on the earlier side, as opposed to maybe potentially creeping into October. We don't know exactly. I mean, I'm not giving any kind of definitive answers here, and no one on the Cowboys is obviously giving any kind of definitive answer here. But I do think it's hard not to see Gallup dressed out on the cords, working next to James Washington, who's just working through some tendonitis stuff, and not think that is an optimistic and a positive sign for where his recovery is at. Yeah, again, just to kind of reiterate one thing you mentioned too, Mike McCarthy said that he does a round. Just to kind of put some more details there, Mike McCarthy says he does a round around the star every morning when he comes in, like basically hits up all the rooms, sees what's going on. He says that every single morning he went by the training room, Michael Gallup was in there. So Michael is obviously taking this very, very seriously and trying to recover. And hopefully him being on the cords is a byproduct of all the extra hard work he put in this offseason.
I do hope the Cowboys are really cautious here because there's absolutely no reason to try to rush him back for week 1. I get that it's a big primetime game on Sunday Night Football against Tampa Bay, and you want to win that game. But week 1 has never mattered less. Like literally has never mattered less in NFL history. So don't try to rush him back for week 1 or week 2. I just want him to be 100% healthy by Thanksgiving. Like when the games really start to matter, that's when I want him playing at his best. So I'm really encouraged that he's healthy, or not he's healthy, but he's working out. He's with Britt Brown. It seems like the rehab is going well. I do hope the Cowboys exercise some caution here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, it's hard to argue that Britt Brown isn't the best in the business at this. I mean, he's just got scruples around the league. So we're trusting him on this timetable, and maybe again we're getting over our skis. Maybe maybe Britt's plan is, hey, no, he needs 2 to 3 months on the cords. And so if that's the case, you're looking at September, potentially at the end of September, look. End of September, I'll take it. That's great. I mean, considering the fact that we were considering it October at the earliest, I'll take Gallup missing only 2 to 3 games as opposed to 4 to 5.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break to tell you guys about Blue Nile. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find Julie as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simply everything online that you need to pick out the right diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile will handcraft a perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Cowboys listeners will get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Again, promo code LOCKEDON. Plus, every single order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So that way, if your significant other picks up the mail, they'll have no idea. So go to BlueNile.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON. All right. A couple more things I want to get to. But first, I got to read this tweet because I thought it was perfect. From John Machota yesterday. Cowboys safety Malik Hooker had the play of the day in team drills, picking off Dak Prescott's pass across the middle that Semi Fehoko dropped. I had a snarky little response to it. I said that basically sums up all 3 players, right? Dak delivers a perfect pass, Semi drops it, and Malik Hooker is in the right spot at the right time. Of course he is, like he always is. So I thought that was interesting. The bigger story that I wanted to talk about was actually the first play of team drills yesterday. The Cowboys used Tony Pollard as their slot receiver with Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. Landon, that's something you and I have been kind of talking about, hypothesizing about over the last couple of months, and now we're seeing it on the field.
Yeah, again, we're not going to crow that we were correct or any of that stuff yet because it's still very early. We still have hurt wide receivers. I'm cautiously optimistic. This is again another step in showing that they're serious about this. Even I think a little bit in team that they had Pollard out running wide receiver routes and basically coming in as a slot receiver. So I think it's fantastic. Again, we don't want to get too overly excited about what we're seeing because we know that the wide receiver injuries could be partially driving this. But I do think it shows that they are pretty serious about at least getting him some experience here so that they can use him in that way. Now the question becomes, like, how often are they planning on using him like this, right?
Like,
Like,
is he
is
the
this
full-time slot receiver? If CeeDee Lamb is on the outside, I kind of doubt that's going to be the case. But could he play 10% of his snaps in the slot? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about like how many of those what would normally be this is what's tough, right? Is that how many of these 10 personnel group, how what percentage of 10 personnel group is going to reduce into 20 personnel,
Yeah.
right? As a and it's going to look exactly like a 10 or 11, except it's going to have a running back playing the slot receiver. The formation will look similar. It's just the numbers that are going to look weird. So I tend to think that this is a great way to get Pollard the kind of increase in touches that they want in a safe way that's also not going to put a bunch of wear and tear on his body, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. We'll continue to monitor this throughout the offseason, but I think it's fair to expect that Pollard's going to see more targets, more snaps out of the slot. They got to find a way to get somebody else the football in space that can make plays, and I think Pollard can do that. We should mention the other receivers because you mentioned the injuries. James Washington out of his walking boot, not quite ready to practice yet, but it sounds like for their mini camp that they have, I believe it's next week or the week after, he'll be ready. Jalen Tolbert has a hamstring injury. He took some reps as a punt returner on Thursday. The Cowboys seem very optimistic that he'll be ready to go next week. Sibi Fehoko, TJ Vasher, and CeeDee Lamb as your receivers for Thursday's practice. Interesting.
Yeah, because I think Noah Brown actually had something too, didn't he? Like, wasn't he missing some time? So, yeah, and I think you meet. I think you mentioned Fehoko and the drop. That actually, I think if I heard correctly, he dropped and then Jordan Lewis tipped it into the air, and then Hooker got the interception. So it was kind of a bouncing around. So I think it's it's a good sign that these guys are getting their hands on the football. It's not a great sign that Fehoko is dropping footballs. I will add in though that he did apparently have a pretty good practice outside of that in another drop.
He's just somebody that needs every rep, right? I mean, he's just so raw when it comes to football. This is probably great for him. Like this, you couldn't ask for a better setup for him, right? He gets to practice with Dak against the number one corners. Like this is great.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I mean, clearly what this guy needs is consistency, and I think that's based on that practice. You can tell he had apparently 2 great catches and then two drops, one that turned into an interception. So all these guys and frankly, that's why I see all these articles, all these tweets about why aren't they using this money that they've got. I just think that they want to get their guys these reps right now and see what they have, and then they can kind of determine, if they need to use some of this money to go get a wide receiver or a tackle or whatever. So I think that's what we're seeing with Fehoko and Vasher.
It's going to be great that they're going to know for sure on Fehoko by the time we get to camp or by the time we get to week 1, right? Like if he doesn't make plays with all these opportunities and if he doesn't get more consistent, wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys just move on, right? Like they just caught him before week 1 because they can find somebody else that's more reliable or somebody else who offers more as a special teamer. But if he does really improve and all these additional reps in the offseason help, maybe he could be your next wide receiver 3. And maybe he gives you more athleticism and more ability to make plays after the catch. So this is just an awesome opportunity for Fehoko in year 2.
Yeah, the opportunities are wide. He could be if he has a great camp, he could easily slide into wide receiver 3 early in the season. If he doesn't, he could be cut. Because Noah Brown can do his job. I think they would like Fehoko to kind of take that job from Noah Brown because he would be a cheaper option. But he's got a ways to go.
I kind of view Fehoku's spot on the team as like the last receiver that doesn't have a ton of special teams duties, right? And if Fehoko can't take the job, that's when I would expect the Cowboys to go out and sign T.Y. Hilton or Julio Jones or insert veteran receiver that doesn't play special teams, right? I think they want him to take that spot.
It's when you start talking about these guys, what becomes difficult is you have to start doing the roster math of,
Yeah.
do you have enough linebackers playing special teams? Do you have enough cornerbacks playing special teams? If that was the issue at times last year, is that some of these guys at positions like linebacker, you didn't have also playing special teams. So that, required that you had to have extra wide receivers playing linebackers, or playing special teams, that sort of thing. So I think it's interesting that Fajoku and Brown, to a certain degree, their roster spots are also going to be tied to how much need there is left over for special teams once the linebackers kind of get sorted out as to who's playing and who isn't playing special teams.
Exactly. I want to talk about the offensive line, but before we do that, let's tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, news, and odds. Plus, they've got the NBA Finals matchup, NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, MMA and UFC. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, talking about the Cowboys' offensive line, Tyron Smith back at left tackle for OTAs. We can calm down. We're not going to have to cut or trade him. It's okay. It's not a serious injury. He's back on the field. But Tyler Smith, the Cowboys' first-round pick, did get some snaps at left tackle just to kind of see where he's at. Any thoughts, takeaways there?
I mean, Tyron watch. Thank God it's over. I'm glad to see that he was back out there. I'm glad he was healthy. I wasn't terribly concerned about. I'm speaking of Tyron. I wasn't terribly concerned about it. Tyler, it's good to see him getting out there and playing some left tackle. I think, one of the things you actually heard Zach Martin talk about was, the benefit of being able to play on the same side and moving outside and inside, and the difference, the difference in the footwork there being very similar. And he brought up a very good point that I can't believe I hadn't brought up yet, is that, when you play all on one side, all of your run blocking footwork is exactly the same.
Oh yeah.
At guard and tackle, there's no difference. So really the only different thing you have to worry about is kind of your angles, your footwork, and the pass protection, dealing with rushers in space.
And your stance
so this is all, what'd you say?
And your stance just a little bit if you're tackling.
Oh yeah,
a little bit
sure.
wider.
Yeah, or just a 2 versus a 3-point stance, depending on where you're playing. So I think that those are going to be the kind of things that he focused. The good news is that he seemingly is getting pretty good reviews from folks. I mean, I know that he went as a tackle. He went against Parsons at one point and was able to kind of slow him down, which was something that other guys weren't able to do. I think he did kind of get hung up on a Dorrance Armstrong snap previous to that. Yeah. But the reviews at guard are really good. It sounds like,
even Mike McCarthy said he thinks he's more of a natural guard because of his power, right, and aggressiveness.
I think the Ron Leary comparison is strong, because he comes into the league with a level of strength that is kind of rare. You just don't get a lot of guys that come into the league that are that strong. I mean, it usually takes being in an NFL program to kind of develop that level of strength. So if he could come in and avail himself of the power that he has up front, and then just kind of learn the required footwork for pass protection and inside at guard, I certainly, especially if they could find another solution at tackles down the road some point, I would not at all be surprised if he ended up staying at guard, just because I think his physicality, his skill set really lines up well there. I think he could play tackle with some time, but I've always really liked the idea of him inside at guard simply because of his playing style.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to say it is kind of funny that whenever we get a positive Tyler Smith nugget of information, people will tweet at me. See, you were wrong. You hated that pick. It's like, well, we haven't even put on pads yet. We haven't even seen a video of a pass block rep from him in a Cowboys uniform. So it's a little early, guys. Listen, I'll take victory laps with you guys. It's just a little early.
And to be clear, this is all secondhand information. We're
Oh yeah.
analyzing information from beat writers who may not even know what they're looking at.
Oh yeah.
So we try to parse it as best as we
It-
can with the guys that we trust. But yeah, we're not making declarations on these
right.
players yet.
All we do is just steal the great line from Sigmund Bloom. We're just looking for drum beats, and it seems like through the first 2 weeks of OTAs, the reviews have been pretty good for Tyler Smith. It hasn't been like he's been overwhelmed or they've been abusing him in practice or anything like that. It seems like the coaching staff and the rest of the players are cautiously optimistic about him going forward.
I'll use another Sigmund Bloomism. We're peeking through keyholes.
Yeah, we
Like
only see a little bit.
we
Yeah.
only see a little bit. The information we get is very curated for us. So as training camp approaches, then it becomes more difficult for them to hide. Because I'll be there, we'll see this, that
Yep.
sort of thing. But for OTAs as of now, the information we're getting sent to us is very much filtered through multiple sources.
And the only other thing on the offensive line that I want to mention were a couple other players lined up. Connor
Yeah.
McGovern took second string reps at center. Thought
Yep.
that was interesting. Matt Waletzko, the Cowboys' 5th-round offensive tackle from North Dakota, played on the left side, once again left tackle. And then Josh Ball playing right tackle. Seems like the Cowboys are pretty set on that, right? It seems like they want Ball to kind of win that backup right tackle spot. And I think they view Waletzko maybe as a left tackle only in the NFL. And frankly, I agree. I just don't think he's got the natural power and leverage yet to be a right tackle.
Well, I think it goes back to what we just talked about, right? That it's easy to learn. It's easier to learn one side and then stick to that side than trying to flop back and forth. And I think that this is a more logical way. I guess it's not the way that you would necessarily want to construct your roster if you're trying to keep the offensive line numbers down. You would like
I don't
have
think
a
Mike
guy.
McCarthy believes in one swing tackle.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
that's what I was going to say.
and maybe more. I should rephrase it. He doesn't believe in a long-term swing tackle. Like I think last year they had Ty Nsekhe. They needed to get through a game. They would have him, right? But I think if Tyron were to miss 4 games, I think they have a plan as to who would play left tackle rather than having one guy try to learn both spots because that's just so incredibly hard.
And I think that this is maybe a better way to do it. Look, I mean, the disadvantage is that you probably need to carry one more offensive lineman than you normally would, or you carry one less interior offensive lineman than you normally would, with the idea that some of these guys can play both inside and out, right? And I think the teaching aspect of it means it's what we just talked about. You get to work on one side, you learn that one side. And that way you could focus on honing your technique as opposed to trying to split your time, trying to learn the technique from the left-hand side and the right-hand side. I think it just gives you more opportunity to kind of concentrate your reps at the position that you're going to play at. I think some people are kind of eyeballing this situation, and getting too focused on starters and backups and let's go is ahead of Ball because let's go's the left tackle, and Ball's the right tackle on second team. I just don't think that's what it is. I think what it is that they are just having these guys choose a side of the offensive line and then having them focus on that technique so as to get that down. So when they need them, they can use it and not like having to split their time between 2 different basic positions that they have to learn. I think
Except for Connor McGovern, they don't care. Go ahead and learn 3 different positions, McGovern.
Well, I think it's different when you're inside. I mean,
it
I
is
think,
a little easier, but
yeah, I think
I just don't think I don't want to say they don't care about Connor McGovern, but I don't think he's in their long-term plan.
Well,
right?
I also think that McGovern's in a different spot in his career. Like you're not wrong. I think that McGovern is probably the smacked around, forgotten stepchild.
A little bit of the whipping boy in the offensive line. Like, hey, we need you to play center this week. We know that you haven't done it in 2 years, but come on, let's go do it.
But at the same time, like he is, he's been in the league for 3 years now. Like this is his opportunity to get on the field. So,
and to be fair, this is probably what Connor McGovern's going to need to do to stick around in the NFL, right? Like if you want, somebody might pay him next year to be a starting guard. We'll see. But he could have a long career, like a 10, 11-year career, just being a swing interior guy. Those guys last for a long time.
And fullback too, right?
And fullback, there you go. Just play all those interior spots.
I do think that's why I do think it's a little different for him. Like he's not learning the position or learning the playbook. Like, well, let's go and Smith and frankly Ball, because Ball had a redshirt year. He's been playing and practicing for multiple years now, so he should know all three of those spots, and he should at least he should know guard and right guard and left guard, and then learning center. So we'll see. The center position is interesting. We'll see how that all plays out, because Farniak is obviously still a guy whose name they want us to keep kind of mentioning because they keep whispering it into the wind.
So they've got Tyler Biadasz, Connor McGovern, Matt Farniak, James MC, and Alex Lindstrom. 5 centers competing for.
It's the opposite of last year, right? Where they didn't have any center competition. Now they got out all the centers. Every available center is here for competition. So,
any other OTA notes? Because that's all that I had.
Kelvin Joseph got rolled up on. It sounds like, but he sounds like he's okay. He was in the locker room later, and he kind of gave everyone the thumbs up. So it sounds like he'll be okay. Parsons sounds like he's still Micah Parsons, so hooray for that.
I love the little brother rivalry between DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons about who's going to get more sacks this year. It's really fun.
Yeah, I don't know that there's too much more. It sounded like like little things like there was the energy was good on the defensive side of the ball yesterday. I heard someone mention that Trayvon Diggs has kind of stepped up and being kind of an emotional vocal leader for the defense a little bit more. We saw a little bit of Curse as a blitzer apparently, which was very effective. Look, the Cowboys have a ton of guys who can come after the quarterback and from multiple different spots. So it's going to be great to continue to watch that.
I think that was it. We didn't get a ton of stuff yesterday, but
that's because Gelkin was out. I noticed that.
Yeah,
because
Gelkin
go
enjoy your
honeymoon. Yeah.
I mean, well, he got married a couple years ago, but it's been a little bit delayed. That's really the reason we didn't get as much.
So congrats to Michael Gelkin, but we missed you yesterday.
We love Michael Gallup. He's incredible. Yeah. So, all right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. The same places you get the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can check out Landon at McCoolBCB. I am at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be right back here on Monday to cover all of the latest Cowboys news.